Okay, welcome back to Next Summit. We're back for our second track, which is focused on all things creators. I'm Micheline, and we're so lucky to be in conversation with Benoni Tagoe, who is the president of radio and head of business development at Hooray Production. So welcome. We're so excited to have you for this conversation today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Sweet. Well, I guess like my first question that's on my mind right now is, as obviously you've been so on the ground with creators, you've been in this industry for 10 plus years now at this point. And I'm curious, are you seeing similarities in the characteristic traits of creators and founders? What's the same and what's different that you've been observing?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think, this conversation just around like the buzzword of creator economy, I think that the lines are becoming blurred because, we're having this generation who is now coming up in social media to where they have an idea or they're known for something and then they're like, oh, okay, I could be the center of everything. And then from that, I can branch out and create products. Like the lowest hanging fruit has always been I'm going to do merch, right? Or if I'm on YouTube, I'm going to make back end money. And now you're seeing situations where a lot of creators are just saying, I'm going to find all the ways to make money, whether it be through brand partnerships, whether it be through live events, etc. And so, you look at something like TikTok, so many people use TikTok as a lead generator. They're like, I'm going to go on TikTok to, get eyeballs, sometimes not even a following, right? Just to get eyeballs and then to be able to push that person to something.
Right.
So I say all that to say, the lines are being blurred between a creator traditionally and then a founder where they're almost becoming the same thing. Whereas a lot of times where a founder, you create something, maybe you don't even need social media to create that thing, but you create it, you put it out into the world, you build it, and hopefully it's successful. I think the only difference is that a lot of the times when we look at creators, we're looking at them through something that started on social media and then branched out. Maybe it gets bigger on social media or it goes off of social media. Whereas with founders, it could be any number of things that social media is not always required.
Yeah, and I guess like to that point, I'm really curious. Obviously we look at some of the biggest tech companies and we think about like the pattern matching. We think about, what are those things that make that founder particularly successful? And it's obviously vision, the grit, the obsession with a product, with a problem, and solving that in a really game-changing way. I'm curious, what parallels, if you are observing that, like what parallels are you seeing with creators, that could position them to be the next big founders?
Well, I mean, one of the things that I believe, I mean, you hear it all the time with people that invest in companies, like just investors. They're always like, we're investing in the people, right? We're investing sometimes like, oh, I thought the idea was cool, but we're investing in the people. And I think that a company can oftentimes be more valuable if the founder has meets a certain things, if the founder is a good spokesperson, if the founder is aspirational, et cetera. You see that with Steve Jobs, Jeff Bezos, many other founders that have been able to position themselves as the thing, right? And they're the thing, but then they also have the business that they're building. And I think that that has always been the case. And, Steve Jobs was around way before social media and he found a way to position himself. And so I think that when you think about creators now, they are coming into the world like, hey, me as the person who posted XYZ video or had this, moment that went viral. And now I'm branching off and now I have a product or I have some type of IP that I am now selling to you, but you've already bought into me. And now I'm going to give you something from me because you've already bought into me. Whereas, traditionally in the founders, like, the Silicon Valley adage of like, oh, I started off, in my basement or in my garage, like nobody knew who this person was. They just brought something to the world that was significant. But I just think, the parallels is just the ability to put yourself in front of people and say, pay attention to me. I'm interesting for whatever reason.
And I'm curious, just like from everything that you have been seeing and, just like this mass movement of creators becoming founders and entrepreneurs. Why do you think we're seeing that shift happen?
Well, people have always, I mean, when I came up in a generation, like I graduated high school in 2005. And I remember at that time, people were starting to question, if higher education was worth it, if they should go to college, or if there was, ulterior paths. And ultimately, at the time that I was coming up, you know, higher education was probably the only thing to do. There wasn't very many options to skip that route. Like if you wanted to go and hustle, like just be prepared for the hard road ahead of you. Like going to school kind of, allowed you to buy time. And so with that, it's kind of become a situation where um, I'm sorry, I completely spaced on where the question what the question was. There was a particular point that I was getting to. What was the question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, why do you think we're seeing creators shift to become founders and entrepreneurs?
That's where I was going with that. So yeah, so back in my days, like go to school, that was like kind of your only option. Now you're seeing people that are figuring out a way to sell something that they're doing every day. And they're like, oh, I just posted this video of me hanging out with my friends, and now people are really interested in it. Let me find a way to monetize it. Let me take my friends on tour. Or oh, my friend is known for saying something funny, and that thing caught on that he said on the video. So let's do merch. So I just think by default, it's become incredibly easy to do things. You could post videos on YouTube and you could start getting paid from them. I could talk about OnlyFans all day because what OnlyFans has introduced to the creator economy has been crazy. I think that you have the adult industry part of it. And the adult industry has always been known to innovate first.
Yeah.
The direct to consumer model, the subscription model, like a lot of that stuff comes from the adult industry. But then you have Cardi B and DJ Khaled and other well-known celebrities that are getting on OnlyFans because essentially what they're trying to do is they're looking for a way to gate their content, to be able to give you exclusive and premium content, and then to be able to charge people for that content. And for them, they felt like OnlyFans was the viable solution to doing that. So all that's to say is that it's just a lot easier to make money in a lot of different directions, whether it be a concept that's very general market or whether it be something that you do that's very niche. There's just so many ways to exploit things and make money off of it. So I think that that's where we're seeing this resurgence of it. And then, you know, Web3 stuff, you want to start getting into that, like you're finding people are making money. They're basically combating what they didn't like from Web 2.0, and they're finding ways like around transparency and ownership. If you look at the nuts and bolts of Web 3, that's what it is: it's transparency, it's ownership, it's
Right.
being able to show you a chain of title, etc. All the things that the early days of the internet really didn't give you. So now people are saying, okay, well, I want this new internet, and I also want to be able to make money off of it. And that's kind of where the crypto explosion is coming into the new creator economy as well.
Yeah, and I guess on that note, specifically about innovation, I'm curious, how do you see, creators continuing to evolve in the future?
I think it's one, everyone's trying to find new ways to make content. I'm seeing a lot of things that's interesting to me where it's like I feel like people are you know there was different levels of content. First, you had like you had YouTube, obviously, then you had Vine, and then you had the Instagram creator. And now you're starting to see people start to push the envelope and find other niche concepts. Some of it is like very, very shocking. It can be shocking content and the things that they say and the things that they do. But I think that, just in terms of the next evolution, I think it's just going to continue to grow because, when you see someone doing one thing, you're like, oh, I can pivot, I can take from that, or I can add on to it. And so it's a thing that's just never really going to stop.
Yeah. And, you know, I, I think that I think that's such a powerful point. And I think, especially with you have like like you were mentioning the Cardi B's of the world, the DJ Khaled's of the world, and how, like the massive shift to D2C. And I'm curious, I guess like what trends do you think will continue to drive um I think what trends do you think will continue to influence how creators are building the new businesses of the future?
Well, number one, I mean, creators are looking for ownership, now more than ever. I remember way, way, way back in the day before my time, Prince was waving the flag of independence and,
Mm,
I'm not going to be a slave to the record label system, right? And then after
yeah,
Prince and before Prince, there's been so many artists that have complained about the lack of ownership over music, right? When you get into TV and film, there's a lot of ownership that isn't had. And so I think that creators are at this place now where they want to own whatever it is that they put out. And not only do they want to own it, but they want to be able to monetize it in the ways that they want to monetize. And so I think we're entering this interesting intersection of studio, network, big company, etc., paying for a creator to do something, but that creator remaining, not, if not all, but full ownership, whether they're doing licensing deals or whether they're just doing distribution deals. And so I think that the world we're going to is really going to be about ownership. I think it's going to be about transparency. I want to know how much you paid the last person, or I want to know how much that person bought that thing for, because now I'm going to give them $5. So if they
yeah,
paid $3.50 for it last week, that's cool, but I want to be able to know that so that when I spend my $5 on it, at least I know. So I think that's essentially where we're going. And then, you're going to see the way I look at Instagram is, everyone on Instagram is their own distribution center, if you will. Like you're
mm,
your own broadcast
yep,
network. You can do everything on Instagram. You can post a photo, you can post a curated video that you edited, you can go live, you can collaborate with others. So I think that people are wising up to all the different outlets that they have, and they're really taking ownership of what they create. As a creator, you have the option to do anything that you want to do. And I've worked with a lot of people who have started their careers on social media and then been able to branch off and do other things, be able to sell products, be able to, go on tour, be able to help other creators become notable figures and start making money as well. The one thing that I feel is interesting, and we're going to see how this all pans out, is that just because you have the access to becoming a business and the access to sell products and the access to generate revenue does not mean you know how to get there, number one.
right,
And number two, doesn't mean that you know how to manage a business, right? Like you go from a creator who's used to doing everything yourself, right? Shooting your content, editing your content, coming up with the ideas by yourself. And then you get to a place where now you start to need help and you need people in your corner to help you from a pricing strategy, go to market strategy, et cetera. And that's not happening.
yeah,
You have a lot of companies out there. I look at a company like a Patreon, right, where a Patreon is allowing you to house all of your content. And then for that housing of your content, you can go out and charge your fans a subscription fee. Okay, cool. Then you have companies like Stir, who's like a company that will tell you, hey, we're going to aggregate all of the platforms that you have, YouTube, etc. And all you have to do is plug those platforms into our dashboard, and we're going to show you the money that's coming in, the money that's going out. Right? It's like
yep,
it's a accounting type of system. But where is it? Where's the opportunity in, or how come we haven't seen the opportunity in being able to go to a creator and saying, we're going to run your entire business from the back end, right? And to be able to do that like very hands on, because there's only so much you can do, like tech wise, when it comes to some of these creators' businesses. Some of these creators need a virtual CEO, a virtual COO, a virtual
mhm,
CFO.
yeah,
And I think that there needs to be a company that allows you to be able to say, hey, come to us. We're going to do all these things as if we were someone that you hire, but we're going to do this for you, and then we're going to spread it out and do it amongst a bunch of other companies like you. And so, because I see it all the time. I see creators have the opportunity to do a lot of things, but then, a lot of times it's mismanaged. It's not managed properly. Culture is a big thing. Anytime you want to build a company, having the people to be able to build that company is incredibly important. But what if you were a creator that's used to working by yourself? You don't know how to establish a culture. What if never had a real job in your life, you don't know what a bad culture is. You don't know what a good culture is. And so I think we're interested in entering into a really interesting space where, those questions are going to need answers sooner or later.
And I think that's a really great point as well, because I'm curious what your thoughts on what will be the key critical factors that, really separate who rises to the top and who sinks at the bottom, as more and more as more and more creatives are becoming founders. And I think that
Well,
management piece is like one piece that you weren't mentioning, but I'm curious, like, what else do you think will really differentiate and move creators into booming or busting?
well, yeah. I mean, everything I think about is I always think about in the context of the team because I feel like if you have a good team, anything is possible. But what's going to eventually happen is the source, i.e., the funding source, is going to eventually either continue to fund or stop funding. Um, I've been in the digital space for a long time and I've seen a lot of platforms pop up and they go and get funding and then they go out and they find creators to give the money to because they need to populate their platform. I've seen so many of them. Like I can't even count on one hand. And what happens is when that new company comes into the market and they tell creators, "Hey, we're writing checks like this and you need to deliver us XYZ." Eventually, in the beginning, creators love it because creators like, well, I never heard of your platform. Your platform is new. You have no audience, and the platform is saying to the creator, well, yeah, you're bringing in the content and you're bringing in the audience, and the platform hands out these huge checks, and then eventually the platform starts to see like, oh, we're not getting a good ROI on this. So then they
Mm,
start tightening their belt. And then they start saying, okay, well, yeah, we used to give checks of $25,000. Now we're going to give a check of $10,000, right? And so eventually that's going to happen at scale to where all of these companies that are pumping money into the creators or are pumping money into doing joint venture deals or to partnering with creators in whatever ways that they're partnering, they're going to start saying, okay, well, we're not making, yes, we bet on your celebrity, we bet on your fame, we bet on your following, but that fame and celebrity and following didn't equate to what I need for my business to run.
right.
So therefore, I'm no longer going to fund it, right? And so I think that the tipping point is going to be the creators that make it are the ones that are running sound, astute businesses. And that the company that's giving them the money to execute feels good about that investment. And the ones that aren't are going to be the ones that are no longer able to secure that funding, and they're no longer able to support themselves because the platforms are changing their algorithms all the time. The type of content that you put out 3 weeks ago that was killing it in views and killing it in engagement, 3 weeks later, now that type of content no longer does anything for you. And so as a creator, you have to be mindful of that and you have to be able to manage the ebbs and the flows. And when the money starts to dry up, then you're going to have to really pivot. And do you have the skills to pivot? That's always going to be the question.
And that makes me think about two things in particular. One, the funding for creators in the future, the creator turned founder, like what's the funding source for them? And that makes me think about, for instance, like Cabbage. Cabbage is this credit card company that loans creators money based on their following. And I'm curious, do you have like any takes on, because I've been noticing there is now an emerging trend, and now there are startups trying to tackle how can we get institutional dollars put into the creator as the founder and betting on the creative and their creative work, um you know for return on investment. And I'm curious, like, what take you may have on funding for creatives in the long run.
Yeah, there's a company similar to Cabbage, but they're specifically focused on the music industry right now. But it's a company called Paper Chain, and when you get paid from the DSPs like your Spotify, your Apple, your Tidal, it takes a very long time for them to pay you, and then for it to go through all the different channels, the PROs, etc. It takes a long time. So there's this company called Paper Chain that's coming in and that's saying, okay, we have an algorithm that can kind of forecast how much money you have coming in. So instead of getting paid in 6 months, we could pay you in a day. We could pay you in a week, etc.
Mhm.
And once you get in the system and your catalog gets like integrated into the system, you can start paying yourself out daily, right? And so you're getting a lot of these situations where, to your point, there's institutional dollars that are coming in, acting as a bank for these creators, advancing them funds, lending them funds, all of the above. And I think that we're going to continue to see creative ways that that happens. But that money is always going to have to be paid back. And at the point that the money doesn't start to get paid back, or at the moment that the creator doesn't start living up to their end of the bargain, then obviously the institutional dollars will start to dry up. But I'm really interested in seeing how that plays out because, to your point, Cabbage, the paper chain, etc. These are companies that are like offering money solutions to creators because as a creator, the money can come very quick. I used to work with someone that would make $50,000 a month on average on YouTube. So every month he knew he was 20 years old at the time every month he knew that he was getting $50,000 from YouTube. So he's like, okay, I can make this type of video. That's going to net me X results. But then at some point, that creator gets tired and he doesn't want to make those types of videos anymore. He wants to change up what he's doing. His audience gets older. So all of that starts to change and it becomes a thing of, can you keep up with the business and the IP that you built? So I'm really excited just to see what's next. I think there's a lot of conversations to be had around IP. I mean, what we're watching that's happening with like and what Disney did with, I think Disney Plus Day is coming or just passed. But like for Disney to
Yes.
be able to create their own streaming platform and to use all of their property, just throw it on this one platform, and then to create spin-offs and have that platform be the main distributor for all the spin-offs. I mean, that's dope. And like everybody, that's business 101. What they're doing is not rocket science, but I do believe that there's going to become a version of that creators can create for themselves and create their own universe to where I can create a Benoni universe. And it's like, you know me for this, but then I'm going to give you this other thing on the side. I'm going to give you this other thing. Like I might create a Benoni cooking channel. And if you know me for business in that cooking channel, I might be able to behind the scenes give you advice on how you start a restaurant from a business perspective, how you create a food delivery service from a business perspective. So even though it's cooking and you know me as a business guy, I could still loop that in and create multiple branches within myself. So all of that is like, I think coming and it'll be really exciting to see.
Yeah. And I think to that note, I'm curious what you're thinking about what it takes. I think there's what it takes to be successful, but what it takes to be successful and have amazing longevity. And I'm really curious about the longevity piece because, you will take Rihanna, for instance. I mean, I think like right now she's trailblazing completely. Her makeup line, is continuing to grow exponentially. Savage Fenty is continuing to grow massively as well. And those businesses, it looks like they will last her, for quite a while. It will be in relevance. After, I mean, even though none of us are completely aware she'll ever come back to music, that will stand, the test of time, maybe even longer than music. So I'm curious what you're seeing, what patterns you're seeing that make creator turned founder businesses really just successful for the long haul. And I also think that you guys, you specifically, also obviously, the entire Issa Rae Productions team are also like amazing examples of succeeding in the long game.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think, working with Issa for as long as I have, it's been all about longevity. She started off as a YouTuber. Now she's, Emmy nominated, right? And that's over the course of, I mean, I've known her for 10, 11, 12 years at this point, but it started when she was in high school. She was honing her skills. Um, I say that to say that, I think that the number one piece for me for longevity, and again, this is not rocket science, but it's really being able to talk directly to your audience and having that built-in fan base and being able to monetize directly, not through a third party, etc. And so for us, one of the big initiatives for radio, for the larger hooray is to be able to start to forge a better relationship with our audience and then be able to monetize that audience directly. Before, we've had, platforms that we've used that have allowed us to aggregate our content and then be able to charge a subscription for it. And that's great, and we'll continue to use those things. But there's only so far that you can go having to have a third party and an intermediary controlling your relationship with your audience. So we're big on audience development. We're big on the mailing list. We're big on text message marketing, et cetera. Because with mailing lists and text message marketing, it becomes a math problem. Everybody who has a substantial text message list or email marketing list knows that if I send out my email or my text message to X amount of people, it's going to yield X amount of t-shirt sales. It's going to yield X amount of ticket sales, et
Mm,
cetera. It becomes, the science is literally that. And so if you're known for a thing and you start having direct conversations with your audience where you can just go directly to your consumer via text, via email, et cetera, then you can give them one thing, but then you could turn around and start giving them a bunch of other content. So I think that that is one way that you establish longevity. And at the end of the day, you have to have something that's good, right? Like, and you could start off, selling apples and oranges, and then eventually, selling grapefruits. That's fine. You just got to make sure that when you were selling apples and oranges, you were great at it. And then when you start selling grapefruit down the line because you pivot in, that's what you want to do now. You got to make sure that you're good at it. So I just think that it speaks to content is always going to be king. Consistency is queen. And then obviously, being able to talk directly to your audience.
and second to last question I have in mind for you, and I guess we could say these would be more like lightning round questions. What do you think we can learn from creators turned founders?
I think that you can learn that, very cliche as it sounds, like anything is possible. That, if, sometimes something may be a mistake and a creator may get popular off of a mistake. Like I managed someone he just did a funny viral video and he had this hit saying that he said in the video. And the next thing you know, like he was known for that. And so we just created a bunch of products around that. So, some things can be in the moment. I think sometimes you have to capitalize on that thing in the moment. And like obviously the goal is to build $1 billion business. The goal is to build a business that's sustainable, long lasting. But sometimes in the creator world, you might have something that's like, no, we're only going to make our money for the next 3 months. So we need to maximize that next 3 months as best as possible.
Mm,
And so you have to like know what your game is. And I think creators understand very well what their game is. And they understand, sometimes can be very realistic with themselves, like, oh, this is going to be for a season. So I'm going to run with this as long as I can for this season. And by next season, no one's going to care. I'm not going to make any money. So I need to go be able to pivot and do something else. So I think you just got to be flexible and just understand what the game is that you're playing.
yeah, and I think and I love that you highlighted pivoting, because obviously like pivoting is just like, so I mean, any massively successful business has pivoted 500 times. What they started with is
Right.
not what they ended with, and I think that's a really great takeaway. And also you obviously just highlighting like knowing the game that you're in. And I think that's actually really important too. Uh, in just for thinking about the longer haul, even if it is this is a cash hog and I'm going to extrapolate everything I can from it for the time being, but understanding that is your mission and that is what that project or product or business will do for you in that time. So I think that's a really great takeaway. And then the last
Mhm.
question I have for you is, what's something or a trend that you feel that people are not paying attention to in this space that will, could end up just like shifting the landscape in this realm, in the longer run?
Mhm. That is a good question. A trend. I mean, I think that funding is becoming like a hot topic, like we mentioned, between cabbage and even Stir, like we mentioned before, and Paper Chain. I think finding unique ways to fund creators and their content is becoming a thing. Creators have more access to funding, especially if they have an audience, than ever before. And I think that creators are starting to find more ways to give their fans ownership of what they do. A lot of the narrative and sales pitches that we hear now are, I could have went and got money from this big company, but instead I'm coming to you guys and I'm going to get the money from you so you can have ownership instead of the big company. It's kind of
Mm,
like, Kickstarter meets, venture capital fund through your funds, through your fans, right? So it's
mm.
telling your fans you can now become investors, and there's a lot of platforms that allow you to, there's like startup and things like that where you can go and invest in businesses. So I think that that's going to be continue to be a big trend where people who are built up by their audiences and who have audiences that rave and love them and will do anything that they say, they're going to start getting receiving funding from those audiences and finding ways to give those audiences ownership of what they create,
I
and then allowing that audience to be able to go and resell it if they want to. So if I buy into you because I like what you're doing, and now I have a piece of ownership in what you do because I gave you my money, and then one day I say, you know what, I want to go invest in something else and I want to sell my stock in you, then I could go sell my stock in you to somebody else who's just as interested in you, and I can go put my money elsewhere. So, the stock, the talent stock, like we've seen kind of people like play and dibble and dabble in that, but I think that being able to invest in people as if they were stocks is going to be a real thing, or as if they were like Fortune 500 companies, and they were being traded on Nasdaq and things like, or on the stock market. I think that that's going to become a thing.
Yeah. Well, oh my goodness, the time has just like flown so fast. Like, thank you so much, Benoni, for, just all of your insight and just, having this conversation with us today. And we're so grateful and so lucky that we got to have you. How can people best stay in touch with you and stay connected?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I am on all social platforms at Noni Biz. That's NoniBizz. So that's Noni Biz. And then the company I run is called Radio. We are on all social platforms, and that's the Instagram or Twitter, etc. handles are the Radio. So TheRaedio. So it's radio with an E. RAEDIO, the radio. But yeah, glad to be joining and excited to see what you all do with the rest of the conference.
All right. So we're going to take a quick break right here, and we'll be right back soon. Thanks, everyone.